What's going on, guys? Welcome to the 6 Yard Workshop. Today, in this video, we're going to take this boring pink wallpaper, very ugly over the stairs opening. We're going to do a nice pine feature wall, really bring this place to life. So let's get into the video. One of the first things my fiance and I decided on when we bought this house is that we wanted to do a feature wall above the stairs. The main reason for this was that the wallpaper seemed extremely difficult to remove. Using an industrial steamer with boiling hot water occasionally dripping on you, precariously balanced on a ladder on the stairs, didn't seem like the best idea. So the first thing I did is remove the quarter end, and you can really see the history of the wallpaper and how much of a pain it would have been to try and remove it. So this is the wood we're using for today's build. It's the same as last time. It is called Pallet stock. It's a grade 5 pine. Not meant for building, but it works perfectly for this application. It is surfaced on 0 size, and we're going to leave it like that. It's just rough cut right off the bandsaw. It's 8 inches by 8 feet by 1 inch thick, and we picked these boards up for $2.50 a piece at the local sawmill. So guys, there is cheaper lumber out there than Home Depot. You just kind of got to find it. Do a Google search for local sawmills, look on Craigslist, the Facebook Marketplace, things like that. There's a lot of people that have band sawmills in their backyard that are willing to give you lumber like this for a lot cheaper than what you pay at Home Depot. So we're going to use this. We're going to use about 25 pieces. And fingers crossed it looks good when we're done. The design's pretty simple. I'm going to have the wood running horizontally, spanning the entire length of the wall. Then I'm going to use some stain and make some fake timber beams on the ends. So the first thing I did was apply the stains to the 4 boards that will make up the posts. I did this first so that it could have time to dry while I was assembling the wall. The trick to applying stain to rough lumber is brushing on an excess amount, giving it about a minute to soak in, then wiping up the excess with a shop towel. This will allow the stain to dry faster and allow more wood grain to show through. I took my first measurement, set up my air compressor, then went down to the shop and set my miter saw up for square. Then I cut all 11 boards for the end and brought them upstairs. So there's 2 extra things you're going to need for this install. One is a level, and I'm going to be using that to make sure the first board and then I'll be checking them periodically to make sure everything's level, because I know that this stairwell in this house isn't. It's 107 years old. Can't really trust it. And, oh, wrong pocket, a stud finder. I picked this up for 10 bucks at Home Depot, and we're going to use it to make sure that our nails are actually going into something other than drywall. Even though this isn't structural, that will definitely help. And self-calibrated test seems to be working. So as I just said, I found the studs and marked them out on the wall with a pen. Then I nailed the first board in, making sure it was level. After about 2 or 3 boards, I knew where the studs were and I knew that it was level, so I just worked my way to the top. Don't worry too much about the gaps you see on either ends of the board. The boards that I'm going to put on the sidewalls later will butt into it and cover that gap right up. Once I got to the top, I had to do some custom fitting, as the ceiling slopes about 1 inch over the 3 feet. I'm going to attach trim to the top and bottom, so I'll show you guys quote unquote how I hid the slope of the ceiling. The sides went up the exact same way. On the right side, I used the offcuts of the 3-foot sections. And on the left side, I used new boards, cutting them to about 6.5 feet. In case you guys are wondering, I'm using a 16 gauge pneumatic finish nailer and 2-inch nails. So we have the boards that we stained from earlier right here, and we're gonna make them look like a post. So we have the one stained side, and then on this side, we're gonna cut a 45-degree miter along the whole thing with the table saw. When we put 2 of those together, if we do it correctly, it should look like one big post. You won't be able to see that gap. And that's what's gonna finish off the upstairs, maybe some trim, and then it'll be done. In order for the left post to fit, the baseboard and the quarter round at the top needed a bit of trimming.
After that, it went up pretty easily. It just took a bit of pressure to make sure that there was no gap in the seam. The right post was a little bit more difficult. One of the pieces went on super easy. I tacked the bottom, made sure it was plumb, and then nailed it into place. The second piece to this post was the troublesome one. I cut it a fraction of a hair too long and was too stubborn to go all the way downstairs and recut it. I also ended up having to cut a notch in the top to go around a 2x4 in the ceiling. To make it fit into place, I ended up using a block and a hammer and gave it a few whacks. Everything seemed to be going well. Just like the other post, I was using my body weight to close up the seam at the miter and then nail it into place. Now I was a bit tired and it was a bit late, and I only had 3 nails left to go when this happened.
So it's been 8 days since I shot myself with the nail gun. Entry wound, and the exit wound over here. So it just went not all the way through, had to pull it out, but it's all good now, all nice and healed. It doesn't hurt to move. We're gonna do a couple things to finish up this wall finally. We're gonna have a small piece added in here to fill this gap. I know you can't see it on camera, but you will in a bit. We're gonna do some 4-inch trim around the bottom and the top, and it's gonna be 4 sloping down to like 3.5 up here, just to kind of hide the crookedness of my house. And we're gonna try our hand at a little bit of quarter round, some custom quarter round, which should be interesting.
I ripped a few boards in half to get a 4-inch width for the trim, and ripped one down to 3.5 for the top right hand side. I used a circular saw and a speed square to cut all the trim to length. Then I used a combination of circular saw and jigsaw to cut a little notch out of one of the pieces because the bottom left post is slightly lower than the right side. Before I stained anything, I made sure the notched piece fit. Lastly, I very carefully cut a taper from 4 inches down to 3.5 for the top center piece of trim that will hopefully hide the slant of my house. So this is the tiny strip I was talking about earlier that needs to get covered up. The fake post actually protrudes out from the wall in this section about 2 inches. I needed to cut 2 pieces, a 2-inch wide piece along the door trim and then a 3-inch wide piece above the door trim. And they both needed to be mitered at a 45 for a snug fit. I figured it would be easier to cut this in 2 separate pieces, and no one's really going to see this part anyway, so the seam doesn't bother me. With all the trim stained and dried, it was time for the final installation. I started with the easy pieces, the bottom, checking to make sure everything was level as I went along. I filled in the gap on the right hand side of the right post second. I was very pleased with how accurate these cuts were, and I think it looks pretty awesome. Lastly, I put the top pieces of trim on. If you look at that back piece of trim, how it's tapered from 4 inches on the left to 3.5 on the right, keeping the bottom level with the planks of wood, and having the taper kind of mirror the ceiling, it tricks the eye into making it look a little bit more level. I'm hoping that when I finally do the quarter round, this will hide it completely. And unless you're looking for it, you won't even know. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below and I will get back to you. And subscribe so you never miss a video such as the upcoming custom quarter round. And as always, thanks for watching.